Case file number 3490, written by Mendicat Fungi, The Stable Goodbye. When I was about 6 years old, I had a series of dreams that took place every night for about 5 days. In the dreams, I was in a fairy tale-like setting, hanging out with a flying fairy, think Tinkerbell, and a talking horse. The fairy had curly reddish-brown hair in a bun, and the horse was brown, with a white stripe down his face and a black mane and tail. So basically, in these dreams, we just frolicked around and had fun, and I don't remember much from that end. Time existed in the dreams, as the fairy and the horse often referenced yesterday, referring to the dream the night before. Eventually, in what would become the last dream of the series, the three of us were sitting in a stable, with the horse in his stall and the fairy floating near the door. For some reason I don't remember, the fairy told me that this would be the last time we would hang out. Disappointed, I asked her, "Will I ever get to see you guys again?" To which she matter-of-factly said, "Probably." And then I woke up. 10 years later, I'm over at my girlfriend's house looking at a photo album from our childhood. I happened to see a picture of her as a 5 or 6-year-old, and she looks strikingly familiar, if not identical, to the fairy whose face I vividly remember from the dreams years ago. Curly reddish-brown hair and a messy ponytail, fat cheeks, big smile, etc. Coincidentally enough, she also rides horses, and some years later, she buys a horse who looks identical to the horse in dreams, whom she still has and I see often. That is brown, has a white stripe down his face, and has a black mane and tail. The horse is now 7 years old and he was born in 2005. I had the dreams no later than 1997. I think I can partially explain seeing her in the dream, but I have no idea about the horse. I don't know how true it is, but supposedly the random people's faces you see in dreams are people's faces from the real world that are just stuck in some recessed part of your memory. We lived in the same town, and our mom shopped at the same store, so possibly I picked up her face from when I was out shopping with my mom. I don't know. But the horse? That's inexplicable. Prophetic dreams are nothing new on this channel. They do fascinate me. I always go with the idea or mantra, I guess you could even go as far as that, is I don't think we can predict the future with certainty, only the many worlds theory, where there are plenty of possible futures, some more likely than others, so you predicted one that was most likely. And maybe even your guardian angel or some entity looking out for you, caring for you, gave you this insight. I don't think it really pushed you towards that end, because you didn't even recognize her until you thought of this again. But I just think there are forces out there that are protective over us. It's a comforting thought. Welcome, I'm Paul. This is Dave. Today I have 13 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. My favorite story this time involves Spanish, apparently. Let's get to it. Case file number 3491, written by Fluffy Maki, Levitating Clove. I was starting to make a sandwich for lunch. I got all the ingredients out and laid them out on the counter and had some of the ingredients in my hand. Now that the short backstory is out of the way, as soon as I got ready to make the sandwich, suddenly I saw something drop from the sky in front of me and heard it audibly land too. I looked, and it was a single clove of garlic. There is zero explanation I can come up with, and I looked heavily. So, there's a small bowl full of garlic cloves that are ready to use so you don't have to break open and peel the whole bulb. It's not in any position that a clove can fall or slip out of, nor overflowing at all. It's up on a little shelf pointing straight up, and there's only a few cloves sitting at the bottom of it. Not even close to halfway up the bowl, or even near the rim of it. It's like the clove jumped up into the air, flew straight up vertically, and landed in front of me, or as if someone picked it up and dropped it. My entire reaction was standing there in awe and confusion, holding my 2 pieces of bread or something, getting ready to build the sandwich. Tell me your secret, garlic, I need to know. Is this a sign to make garlic bread? Anyways, apart from the last sentence, the experience was entirely genuine and the story serious. I'm actually legitimately stumped and in confusion as I eat my sandwich and move on with my day. Case file number 3492, written by Kruno S. The Song from Beyond. Both my grandparents were sleeping when all of a sudden my granddad woke up really agitated, sweating and worried. He woke my grandma up and told her he was going to get my auntie away from the chandelier, which was above her crib. He ran to her crib, where my auntie was peacefully sleeping, and snatched her out. As he was hugging her, worried out of his mind, the chandelier fell on her crib, destroying it. Got another one, this time from a cousin, daughter of the aunt my granddad saved from the falling chandelier. She had just given birth, but there were some huge complications. She had a tumor removed, and both her and her daughter's life were in grave danger. My grandma was with her, helping her through. Now, unlike my grandpa, who was nowhere near religious, she is not seriously religious, but she likes to pray every so often. Things were looking bad for my cousin and my new niece. So my grandma went to bed and asked my now defunct grandpa for help, even though they had divorced over 30 years before, and went to bed in tears. The next morning, my cousin woke up ecstatic and called for my grandma. She told me she'd dreamt about Grandpa singing her a song she hadn't heard since she'd moved to the US at the age of 5. She didn't know the name, but she recited the chorus to my granny. Grandma dismissed it as a coincidence, but filled her with joy. When she went to bed that night in her hotel room, she accidentally turned on the radio, which was taking requests for songs. An old man who asked to remain anonymous requested the song my grandpa liked to sing my cousin. My cousin's and niece's condition greatly improved and are now doing pretty well. The magic of music. Case file number 3493, written by K.O. Rin. Conversation in the Fog. A few years ago, my friend and I went to lunch at this Mexican restaurant in our city. When we'd finished eating and got in line to pay, there was an older man and his, I'm assuming, wife in front of us. They wrapped up their transaction, but for some reason, the man stopped to watch the two of us pay. I kept glancing over at him because it was starting to dawn on me that he was incredibly familiar. I just couldn't place him. Our eyes met and I smiled a vaguely polite, "Hello, stranger," smile, feeling slightly awkward that he caught me looking at him. "I'm sorry, but you look really familiar," he said. Whoa, I wasn't alone. I told him I was just thinking the exact same thing. My grandpa was the pastor of a church for years and years, and I'd been forced to go to that church, so I figured the man came from there. I smiled again and asked him if he knew my grandpa's name, and he looked at me blankly for a second before shaking his head. I didn't want to stand there running through all my classmates' names or listing a bunch of places where he might have met, so I was about to ask him his name, but then his wife sort of pulled on his arm and they left. When they left, it was like I came out of a fog or something. Everything else had sort of blurred out while I was talking to the man. The cashier was holding out my change and looking kind of impatient, but my friend was gapping at me like I was a ghost or something. We went out to her car and she asked me who the man was. I thought that was strange and asked, didn't you hear us trying to figure out how we know each other? She put the keys in the ignition but didn't start the car. Instead, she looked at me with that same confused expression on her face. You weren't speaking English. Now, I'd been taking Spanish classes since 6th grade, but I still wasn't fluent enough to speak effortlessly with another person, and even when I'm speaking it never translated into English in my head. Talking to the man in line had felt and sounded, to me, exactly the way a normal English everyday conversation sounds and feels. She wasn't winding me up either. I could tell that from her face. Maybe she just hadn't been paying close enough attention to us either, so between that and the noise of a popular restaurant at lunchtime, she only thought she wasn't hearing English. Never ran into the guy again. Not that that's a huge surprise since my town is fairly large. Who knows? I think I've narrated probably 5 stories involving people speaking a language that they either don't know at all or only know slightly and not even realizing it. It's like Parseltongue in Harry Potter, where you know a language, you don't know how, and you speak it in a way where you hear yourself speaking your native tongue, English in this case. I think our sense of reality is so entwined with our own brains and how the brain it's like some people who are blind, they actually still see because the brain simply fills in and projects what it expects to be there, which is very dangerous in that case. If the signals from light are not reaching from your eyes to your brain, or they can't be interpreted by your brain, and the brain's just filling it in, well, you might see an open door and it's closed and you just smash into it. I don't know exactly how that works for people who are blind and still kind of see that way, or partially blind and they fill in the gaps. The brain is almost like an image generator in AI models, like Midjourney images and that I use for the videos, where you type a prompt and it tries to fill in the gap. Or if you edit an image, it tries to understand the context and what might come next. But just like AI, it's not perfect. And so there could be errors made. But this is even more pronounced because it's not just filling in gaps, it's overriding what you're supposed to be hearing. So this goes beyond prediction, and it's like your brain is trapping you into a false reality. Although, probably something more going on than just that, because this man also found you familiar. So you both found each other familiar, and somehow that triggered this linguistic glitch or anomaly. I've never experienced anything like that. When I'm speaking, I can speak in French. Je peux parler en français si je veux, puis quand je parle en français comme je fais maintenant, je me comprends dans ma tête, les mots, je peux les traduire dans l'anglais si je veux, mais so everything I just said, I understood what it meant in English, but I still heard myself speaking in French. Maybe if you don't have much mastery of a language, there's a conversion factor your brain plays, I don't know. Case file number 3494, written by Anonymous. A mnemonic discrepancy. I know memory is imperfect, so I want to be very specific and transparent here. This isn't dramatic, but it's unsettling enough that I can't shake it. My girlfriend drives a white Camry. For a long time, I remember her license plate as number, Jew, more numbers. A couple of weeks before this happened, the 4 of us, me, my girlfriend, her adult son, and his girlfriend, were on a longer drive out of town. We somehow got into the topic of remembering license plates and number patterns. I remember explicitly saying that I remembered my girlfriend's plate as Jew, and that it stuck in my head because I associated it with the word Jew, a direct phonetic mnemonic for the order of those letters. That detail matters to me, because if the plate had been UEJ this whole time, I know that would not have been the mnemonic my brain would use. I would have remembered it as something like UEJ Canal, similar to the Suez Canal, because that's the only association I naturally make with that letter order now. I wouldn't have mentally labeled it Jew or Jew unless that was the actual left to right sequence on the plate. I've always been good at remembering strings like that. License plates, old video game cheat codes, certain phone numbers from when I was a kid, even some credit card numbers. This wasn't a vague or casual memory. Okay, fast forward to the day this happened. My girlfriend and I were meeting at an IHOP to grab a meal. I parked next to a white Camry and noticed the plate was number UEJ. I remember thinking, that's weird, that's really close to her plate, and it's also a white Camry. What stood out is I didn't think I had been wrong all along. I was certain her plate wasn't UEJ, which is exactly why it felt strange. I looked more closely, noticed a couple of items inside the car that were hers, and realized it was actually her car. Same car, same color, same everything, just the letters reversed. I walked into the IHOP, still confused, and the very first thing I asked her as I slid into the booth was, "Did you change your plates?" That was my immediate reaction, before we even ordered or talked about anything else. I then asked her if she could pull up our insurance card in the Progressive app, so I could double-check the plate number. Oddly, the app wouldn't load at all. It was unresponsive and we couldn't access the card. When I pointed out the plate, she said it's always been UEJ. She doesn't remember it ever being JUE. I know how this sounds, and I've tried to explain it away as a memory error. But what bothers me is, I had repeated exposure to the plate over time. I had a very specific mnemonic tied to the exact order of the letters. I referenced that order out loud in a conversation weeks earlier. I noticed a difference immediately, before even consciously realizing it was her car. My first reaction was to ask if the plates had been changed. Nothing else strange happened, no missing time, no other glitches, just this one very small, very precise change that doesn't line up with my memory at all. Case file number 3495, written by Prestigious Ear 3337. Ash on both sides. When the sun comes up, my cats usually start wanting to get let outside. I have 3. Recently, my sleep schedule has been entirely out of whack, sleeping most of the day, being awake most of the night. So my mom was in bed, and I was in the living room watching TV, wide awake. It gets to about 3:30 in the morning, and one of my cats, Ash, starts scratching at the door. I look at him a few meters away, and specifically think to myself about how annoying his scratching is, that it's way too early for him to go outside, and that there's no way I'm getting up from my comfy spot to do so. He gives up, and about an hour later, to my horror, he is on the other side of the door, sitting scratching at the door, waiting to come inside. I was stunned. I ignored it and convinced myself I was hallucinating, or maybe it was my other cat that wanted to go outside and I wasn't paying attention, and Ash had been outside all night. Though I thought this was unlikely, as none of the other cats ever scratch at the door to go outside, and he looks totally different to either of the other cats. Or maybe it was a random cat? Also unlikely, as there are barely any other cats around, and they have no reason to be scratching at our back door to come inside, and went back to watching TV. I am absolutely certain I did not let that cat outside. Half an hour later, my mom is woken up by my other cat wanting to go outside, and she opens the door to see Ash at the back door. She asks me why I let Ash outside. I say I did not let him out, and tell her how weirded out by this I was. She says that Ash had been on her bed just a few hours ago, when she went to bed, and I might have let him out by mistake. I tell her I am absolutely certain I never opened that door. She checks the other back door and it's closed. We check all the windows and they're closed. He had absolutely no way of getting out, yet somehow he ended up on the other side of that door. I'm usually a logical person, and I have tried every reason this could have happened, and none of them add up. Case file number 3496, written by I Am Hawk. 20 Years of Haunting. Around 1993, I was living on the bottom floor of a 3-story apartment building. The complex was easily over 20 years old, and during the course of my staying there, weirder and weirder stuff kept happening. Strange noises, things being in the wrong place, that kind of stuff. I even had a roll of tape flip off my dresser between me and my roommate as we were talking. I always thought there was something weird about the place, but it wasn't a huge deal, just creepy. One night, I woke up to what I thought was my roommate coming home. It would be 3 a.m., his shift ended at 2:30, only to find the cat completely arched and puffed out in the far corner of the room. The blinds for the sliding glass door swinging wildly, and several boxes of stuff overturned. After realizing my roommate wasn't home, I thought that the cat knocked the stuff over, but that wasn't it either, as these boxes were rather heavy and on the floor. I went room to room checking for intruders. I got to my roommate's door and called his name several times and got no response, but heard the sound of 2 feet shuffling up to the other side of his door. Grabbed the cat and the phone and called the cops. They came and searched but found nothing. They wanted to cite me for a false alarm, but didn't because of 2 strange things. One, the screen was kicked out of my roommate's window, even though the window was shut and locked, and there were footprints in the carpet leading up to the door, but none leading away from it, meaning whoever was in the room walked to the door, but not from it. Another piece of info, my roommate vacuumed his room from the far end to the door, so as to not leave any footprints. He thought the repair guys for the complex were the ones messing with our stuff, and was trying to get proof. He ended up staying with his girlfriend around this time, using the apartment for storage until the lease was up. The place had him pretty creeped out. Fast forward to about 2 weeks later. I woke up again around 3 a.m. to what sounded like my neighbor above me coming home. Her bird was squawking up a storm and then went silent. I heard her high heels as she walked up to the kitchen, and then as it came back and down the hall towards her room, above my room. It was about that time that I realized that everything in these apartments, except kitchen and bathrooms, are carpeted. I listened as these increasingly loud footsteps came into the room over my head, to the left side of my bed down the hall, and to the floor on my right side of the bed. My eyes were squeezed shut as I could feel the presence of someone standing very close to me, and then I heard, as clear as day, my name in a slightly strained female voice. It was spoken very close to my right ear. I was petrified for the next several hours before I finally was able to move, but I was too terrified to leave the safety of the covers. I never slept, just waited till the sun rose and got up, and got the hell out of there in the safety of the light of day. Part of me wishes I had opened my eyes to face whatever it was. Part of me is very glad I didn't. Case file number 3497, written by J. Blogan23. Counting to 3. Recently, my family and I purchased some new towels for our guest bath and threw out several of our older towels. I distinctly remember buying 2 towels for the shower. I even have the receipt for the 2 towels, and I remember washing the 2 towels and hanging the 2 towels in the guest bath. Yesterday, I was cleaning the guest bath when I happened to notice a 3rd towel. When I asked if anyone had gone to the store and purchased a 3rd towel, I was met with a resounding no. No one else remembers buying a 3rd towel, but when I bring it up, my family says it's no big deal and to just stop acting crazy about it. When I ask them why they don't seem bothered by it, they just shrug it off and say that I'm being crazy, and now every time I go into the guest room, I have a family member following me, asking me if I'm okay. Even my son, who was with me at the time we bought the towels originally, said we only bought 2 of them, but now he can't remember if we only bought 2 or if we bought 3 or 4. My biggest concern is the fact that I'm the only person in the house that finds this odd at all. Case file number 3498, written by Emma Ann. The Beer Run Lie. My boyfriend and I were both asleep in his apartment, which he shared with 2 other people, both of which were out of town. And at 6 a.m., this was winter, the sun was just barely up, blue light status. We heard the buzzer ringing and woke up out of confusion. He said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yes, but who would be ringing the doorbell at 6 a.m.? Before he could get up and go to the door, we heard someone walking up the stairs, as the person had been able to get into the building's front door. We figured it was someone who lived at the top floor and just rang the wrong bell. But then, we heard knocking on the door, and someone trying a key in the lock. My boyfriend gets up to check. He doesn't think it will be either of his housemates because they were in a different state. He asks, "Who is this? I think you have the wrong door." The man outside says, "I was just out to go get beer. I'm looking for my friend's apartment. We were all drinking and they told me to go get beer. I'm not sure if I'm in the right building. Could you tell me where they might be?" My boyfriend told him, "Please go. You have the wrong apartment. I don't hear anyone upstairs partying, so I don't know how you got in. And how the hell am I supposed to know where your friends are?" The man outside kept pressing him. "Well, do you think you could lead me to where they might be?" He said this all very formally, unlike someone who had been drinking. With that, my boyfriend lost his crap and told him if he doesn't leave now, he will call the cops. We heard the man walk up another flight of stairs and try the door up there, then walk down and out of the building. I was shaken up. It all seemed very strange. My boyfriend came back into the bedroom and told me when he looked out the keyhole, the man out there was probably in his 40s, wearing a long dark coat, and he had never seen him in the building before. As there are only 3 apartments in the building, and everyone that lives there is in their early to mid-20s. Case file number 3499, written by I Am the Walrus. The Deck Knew. 2 winters ago, I was on vacation with my girlfriend, visiting her hometown, and one evening we were hanging out with a slightly hippy-dippy crunchy granola friend of hers, who brought out some tarot-esque cards to tell our fortunes. There was an accompanying book with some guidelines on how to interpret the cards. You pick some cards, then read the instructions in the book. The deck was 70 or 80 different cards, I think. None of us there actually believe that these sorts of things are magical or anything, but it can be fun to play with them, and using an oracle like this can provide some interesting self-discovery and insight. So we took turns drawing cards for ourselves. I don't remember the exact specifics, but I remember that a person would draw 5 cards in total, and each one was interpreted to apply some different aspect of our lives. My turn was third, I think, after my girlfriend. The first card I turned over was the same as the first she had turned over. We joked about how we were fated to be together. The second, third, and fourth cards were the same as the second, third, and fourth cards she had turned over, in the same order. At this point, I think everyone there thought I was fooling them, but I shuffled the deck thoroughly before starting. Before drawing each card, I cut the deck to a random place and drew from there. No one else touched the deck the whole time I had it. Even if someone else had been a magician, I can't imagine how they'd have caused this. Of course, everyone else there, except my girlfriend, must have thought I was a magician and I was pulling their leg. But I wasn't. I was mystified too. Now it comes to the last card. We've all been growing more and more intrigued by the progression so far. I shuffle the deck another few times, cut it, then, sort of as a joke, make a big show of taking the second card down from my cut. It's not the same as the one my girlfriend had picked. We all breathe a sigh of, haha, coincidences sure are coincidental, and continue on with the game. When we finish with that card, I'm still holding the deck as it was. I lift up the top card, the one I actually cut to, and it's the 5th card my girlfriend picked. And now everyone is just laughing because they're sure I'm a masterful close-up magician and I'm just having fun. But I'm not. I don't believe in the supernatural, but I still can't figure out how the hell to explain what happened tonight. What the hell? So I'm not one for fate, I'm just one for signs, coincidences, and applicable forces from external stimuli or wills. And I think this is just a case where a guardian angel, for some reason you're supposed to be, or very beneficial to be with the woman you're with now. So how to do that, how to send that message in a way that isn't too direct or too obviously paranormal? Well, just arrange the deck where the cards are in a certain order and yeah, like this. You just say, okay, well, I'm not a magician, but this is theoretically possible that someone in the group was, or some way your subconscious was ordering the cards, I don't know. That's what you tell yourself, but in reality, you're just supposed to be with this person. In most timelines, I think it benefits you to be with her. And your guardian angel or whoever is orienting you that way. I think that's cool as long as it's only a suggestion, a strong suggestion you could say. I don't want to be controlled by anything else, but if I'm given hints, that's okay. As long as the choice and free will is still ours. All good. Case file number 3500, written by Educational Road 2461. The Invisible Feline. So, I was sitting on my bed earlier today with my door open and my window open too. When I do this, usually the door is relatively securely closed and won't get pulled open by a draft as it gets slightly stuck in the doorframe, but it's loose enough to open so that my cat can come into my room if he chooses by pushing the door open with his paw. I was sat in bed and saw the door open by itself, but I wasn't too freaked out because I swear I heard the sound of my cat pawing the door open. He's rather large and has big paws and claws, so I'm used to the sound he makes. But when the door opens a little bit, there is no cat in sight. I think it's a bit odd, but I brush it off, get up and close the door again, back to its original, slightly ajar state. Then like 5 minutes later, my door opens again, and I hear the paw sound, but this time I look up and I swear I see the shadow of my cat's paw pushing the door open. But yet again, the cat is not in sight. I go downstairs to tell my mom about how odd it is, and I see him asleep on the sofa. So yeah, maybe it could have been the wind draft from the window being open, but it doesn't explain the distinct sound of my cat's paw, and then the weird shadow. Case file number 3401, written by D-Man-Boy24, Between the Light and Home. I was 10 years old, staying in a rural RV campground in Ohio for the summer. My best friend there, a kid about the same age as me named Joey, and I were hanging out one night walking back from a movie night at another friend's campsite. We're walking back, complaining about having to leave even though everyone else got to stay, when we both look up and see a bright flash of light in the sky. Being 10 years old and both having overactive imaginations, freaked the hell out and assumed it was aliens. We took off running to my campsite, and when we got there, we found both of our parents there outside looking less than happy. Before we even had a chance to speak, they asked where we had been. We told them we had been watching movies and had just left. That's when we looked past them and see his brother and sister there. They had been at the movies too, and because they were older, got to stay later, and they were still there at the movies when we had left. There was only one route that would lead to my campsite, and they hadn't passed us on that route. They informed us we were an hour past curfew and wanted to know where we had been. We explained about walking home and the bright flash of light, but they did not believe us. Can't say I blame them now, but at the time I was pissed and terrified. Where had the hour gone? Classic alien abduction story. Haven't had many of these lately. Haven't really been seeking them out. There are plenty to read, but I just think that you basically know what's involved, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. So I just included this one, so you remember, don't forget, aliens are out there, and they like to study us for some reason. I don't think it involves weird probes or anything, like the Supernatural episode, where the person abducted has to dance with the alien, but of course it wasn't really an alien. It was, I won't say anything if you haven't seen Supernatural. What the hell are you doing if you haven't? I think aliens are real. I think they like to study us. I guess we're interesting enough as a species to warrant study, which is kind of a compliment. With that said, I don't want to be abducted myself, so aliens, if you hear this, you're interesting, but just, go after other people, not me. Maybe don't go after anyone, but just, okay. Case file number 3402, written by Powers1217. The senator hit brick walls. My uncle was in the military, stationed in France in the 1960s. He and his buddies were hanging out at his house one night and decided to go out. He told his wife goodbye, and she never saw him alive again. He was found days later dead, his face down in a creek. The army gave my aunt no information. They didn't even release the autopsy findings. Where it gets interesting, all of the guys who were with him gave the same exact story about what had happened. No deviations. My father was in the army at the same time and asked a lot of questions, but the army didn't give him any answers. Things that made us go, The army flew my aunt back to the USA. Normally a widow would have to find housing after her spouse passes away, but the army forced her to live on an Oklahoma army base when she got back. I'm not sure how many months she and my cousins lived there. The army never explained to her why she had to live there. After a while, they let her leave, and she went to live with my grandparents for a time. At one point, after this, my grandpa received a suspicious letter with money in it. There were rumors my uncle was a covert operative, or possibly my aunt's French mob-connected family had something to do with it. Yes, mob. Fast forward to the 1980s. My uncle was president of a college in Texas, so he had connections. At first, he submitted a Freedom of Information Act, hoping to finally get information. The FOIA was denied, so he contacted a senator he knew for help. The senator did his best, contacted everyone he could think of that might help. He told my uncle all he did was run into brick walls. He also told him this: the senator was basically told to back off and leave it alone. I know I've missed some details, but this is long enough. My aunt and grandparents were heartbroken. My aunt, his wife, was French. Makes it even stranger that they sent her to an American base to live. Now time for the jokes of the day. I was feeling a little playful yesterday and said to my wife, "Look, I haven't worn this in 8 years and it still fits." She said, "For God's sake, man, it's a scarf." If it didn't fit, how fat would you have to get for a scarf to no longer fit, for your neck to expand to that size? That'd be Kind of impressive and scary. My siblings and I went out to dinner with my dad, and we started talking about dad jokes we liked. All of a sudden, my dad goes, "I've only made 3 dad jokes my entire life, and they're all sitting in front of me right now." Damn it. He got him. That's fatal. Accidentally swallowed 2 pieces of string, and they came out tied together. I crap you not. The term t-shirt actually stands for something. Tyrannosaurus shirt. You know, because of the short arms. My 6-year-old nephew just told me this joke. Why does a duck have feathers? To cover its butt quack. Video up here. YouTube thinks you'll like it. Check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I'll see you next time.